Yo, what up? Welcome to another episode of the Oakland Warriors podcast. I'm Patrick, flying solo. I just want to celebrate the fact that even though the Warriors lost 107 to 103 to the Phoenix Suns at Chase Center, I just want to celebrate the fact that the Warriors showed signs of life. It's been a long time since we actually cared about moral victories, but there's kind of one here. Right? It's like they played hard, they competed, and this would have been a great win to get. But bottom line is they played with energy, and that's something that we haven't seen much of in recent weeks. I think at this point in the season, when it's not so much about the flow of the season, but literally like there's a handful of games left and then the playoffs start, it's looking at the intention that the Warriors play with, right? How they're playing the game. And even though it's a loss, even though it's kind of a painful loss, I wasn't that mad about it. You know, I was just happy to see a good game. For me, you want to see them start playing well leading to the playoffs. Yes, it's a loss to the best team in the league record-wise. But if you look at their schedule, honestly, like if the Warriors play this hard, this well for the most part to finish the season, you know, build some momentum, they could beat Utah, you know, at home. And then Sacramento, the Lakers, the Spurs, and then the Pelicans. They should take all those, especially if Steph comes back for the last one or two games. You know, even if the Spurs and Pelicans are still trying to get into the play-in round. There's a net positive, if that sounds weird, about this game. They scraped, they clawed, and we saw a lot of good things and honestly some really bad things in this game. Good things start with Jordan Poole, who has just been somewhat transcendent as of late. 37 minutes, 11 for 22, 7 for 15 from three, 9 for 10 from the free throw line, 9 boards, 7 assists, only 2 turnovers, 38 points. That's awesome. It's fascinating because, right, like earlier in this season, we were like, how good could Poole be? And he was pretty solid playing next to Steph before Klay came back. But then, of course, there was that stage where Klay came back and Jordan Poole couldn't find his footing off the bench. You know, he'd throw some half-ass efforts out there. He'd shoot poorly. He wasn't engaged all the time. He'd show flashes, but then just disappear for stretches, right? And now that he's back in the starting spot, well, actually, even before then, he just started playing well around the time Draymond announced he was coming back, and he's been on fire since. So take that as a positive moving forward, right? The debate that I keep referencing about whether or not he deserves that rumored 4-year, $80 million contract. I mean, he's definitely proving that he deserves it, you know? And it really, you know, just to jump ahead, brings up some questions about next year's starting lineup. Do you put Poole back on the bench? Do you bring him into the starting lineup and start like Steph, Poole, Klay, Draymond, and Looney? Does Kuminga sneak into the starting lineup at some point? Does Wiggins hold his spot, or does he come off the bench? Does Wiseman, as fanciful as it may seem, does he eventually become a starter sometime next year? Who knows? But just the idea of having Steph, Poole, and Klay all healthy, all having like a summer off to train, get into shape, whatever, to start the season, that's pretty intriguing to me. I look forward to the playoffs when those 3 dudes are all on the court at the same time. But of course, Klay Thompson, he had a really, really poor shooting game. 34 minutes, 5 for 21, 1 for 10 from 3, hit both of his free throws, 4 assists, only 1 rebound, and 13 points. Hey, if you get like an average effort from Klay, then the ending of this game is probably a little bit different. But again, it's unfortunate because what we want from Klay at this point is for him to be consistent, and he's not that yet. So we'll see if he can string together a few games where he shoots well and plays well, like at both ends nonstop. But right now, it looks like he probably will be kind of a hot, cold, on again, off again question mark going into the postseason. Andrew Wiggins, he was a little bit more aggressive, but again, didn't shoot that great. 6 for 16, 2 for 6 from 3, 5 for 8 from the line, 8 boards, 19 points. But his effort was good. I'll give him that. And again, that's something like that is the complaint about Wiggins for the most part. So I'll take that as a somewhat of a positive. Draymond Green had an impactful game, 10 boards, 7 assists, 8 points, 4 for 5 from the free throw line. So, there are some bright spots and some decent signs here and there. It was interesting, though, that Kuminga only played 5 minutes and Moody only got 1. And Kerr went with a bench rotation of Bjelica, Iguodala, Otto Porter Jr., and Gary Payton. He's going with the vets, right? This felt a little bit like a playoff game. And so in tight situations, you might see more of that. With Iguodala back and Green back and Wiggins out there and Otto Porter Jr. back, you might see less of Jonathan Kuminga in the playoffs. I mean, you will see him in certain matchups at certain points, but it was interesting to see that Steve Kerr stuck to the vets to see what they would give, to see if he could secure a win in this one, because they really need a win at some point. It was kind of ironic to me that if you watch the broadcast, I think with a couple minutes left, they came back from a TV timeout and they played some of the coaches talk in the huddle. And it was Steve Kerr, and he was basically telling the team, play smart. I forgot the exact verbiage, but play smart, and that's how we're going to win this game. And unfortunately, they had a couple bad plays, right? Not smart plays. There was the Draymond Green jumps up in the air. Otto Porter Jr. doesn't cut the right way. He doesn't slip the screen. And Draymond throws it towards the 3-point line or something. There's just miscommunication, and Draymond bailed and had nowhere else to throw it. And that was a turnover. And then there was the one where, it was a bad call, in my opinion. The one where Poole had put the Warriors up by 1, and then Klay on the inbounds got called for a foul on Devin Booker, where their arms got locked up. And it looked like, when I rewound it, it looked like Booker had Klay's arm and kind of pulled it over his shoulder, and it was the ref behind Klay who called the foul. So Klay was pretty adamant that he didn't foul Booker, and they got pulled, and it seems like it. But just in general, I won't say that was a dumb play, but it's just unfortunate that he put himself in that situation, And then there was that half-court three-pointer with 7 seconds left that Jordan Poole took, and there was a ton of time on the clock. I get it. He thought maybe that Devin Booker was going to foul him. They were down by 3, I believe. So, you foul to force the 2 free throws, which is a smart play, but Poole tried to do the right thing. He saw what he thought was Booker trying to foul him, and then he was trying to get 3 free throws, but instead Booker pulled back and Poole hoisted a beyond half court 3-point shot with like 5 or 4 seconds left, which is, again, a ton of time. But he tried to do the right thing. He wasn't backing off of the moment. It wasn't so much like he forgot how much time there was or didn't realize. He just made a miscalculation there. So you live and you learn. College basketball fans, join the action on the court during the biggest tournament of the year with DraftKings Sportsbook. Turn your team's victory into your own big win. New customers can bet $5 on any team to win and get $200 in free bets if they do. It's that simple. If they win, you win. If Sportsbook isn't available in your state yet, you can still join the college hoops action with DraftKings Pools. Everyone can play free pools all March long for a shot at a share of over $250,000 in prizes. Simply join a pool and answer questions like, who will make it to the next round, and who will hit the most 3-pointers? Then track your results. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code TBPN. Bet $5 on any college hoops team to win and get $200 in free bets if they do. If they win, you win with promo code TBPN this week at DraftKings Sportsbook. 21 and over. Restrictions apply. See show notes for details. But no doom and gloom here, right? Especially after the past several games. I think, again, looking at the remaining season, they have a chance to win a few games, honestly, in a row and actually start feeling better about themselves and getting some momentum. Right now, the Warriors are in fourth place. They slip behind Dallas. And I had said that fourth is fine with me because I wouldn't mind seeing Utah in the 5 spot because I don't worry about Utah as much as I worry about some of the other teams. But the Denver Nuggets have slipped past the Utah Jazz. And so now the Warriors are looking right now at playing the Nuggets. And the one thing about the Nuggets is I do worry about Nikola Jokic, of course, because he is the defending MVP. And he just seems to have the ability to make his team better like most MVPs do, right? The Utah Jazz, they don't have that. And I feel okay against the Nuggets, to be honest, so that's fine. But we'll see how it shakes out because it's so honestly like tight from 3 to 6, right? The Mavericks are in third, and technically the Warriors are tied, but the Mavericks have the tiebreaker. And then the Warriors are 2 up on the Nuggets, and the Nuggets are half a game up on the Jazz. So honestly, if the Warriors lose to the Jazz in the next game, then that might help their cause if they really cared as much as I do about seeing the Jazz instead of the Nuggets in the first round. But it's interesting, right? Like I was thinking about this season, and you know, like there's a lot of folks out there who think the season is done. And I don't know. We don't know, right? Because we don't know the nature of this team because we haven't really seen them whole. And I think there's 2 scenarios. In the most pessimistic way is that the Warriors, they maybe split the final few games of the season, and then they run into a team that is hot or just has an advantage somewhere against them, like the Nuggets, and they lose in the first round. That would be a very, very disappointing end to the season. I don't think that'll happen. I think that the Warriors will get out of the first round. So basically the second scenario is they play better like they did against the Suns, and they start building up some of this momentum, and they play either the Jazz or the Nuggets. I don't think the Timberwolves are going to creep up in there, but they play the Jazz and the Nuggets, and Steph, Klay, Draymond, if they remain healthy, they start clicking, you know, they start building even more momentum, and they win the first round, right? Coming out of the 4 spot, they would have to play the Suns because the Suns are not going to lose to the Clippers or the Pelicans or the Spurs or the Lakers or whomever ends up in the 8th spot. So the Warriors would play the Suns. And honestly, I mean, both the Suns and Grizzlies are good. But right now, I would rather face the Suns in the second round than the Grizzlies. The Grizzlies just have something that the Warriors haven't figured out yet. And I feel like the Suns, you know, as good as they are, the Warriors have a better chance against them. Right now, they just match up better versus the Suns than they do against the Grizzlies because they know how to play some of those guys a little bit better. Not saying that they're going to beat the Suns, but you got to account for the fact that Chris Paul has a bad track record against the Warriors in the playoffs. Chris Paul losing to the Warriors is basically just the natural state of the universe. And then, of course, the basketball gods, they refuse to let Chris Paul win a title. So that's another reason. Karma. But honestly, like I've said this before, if Steph, Klay, and Draymond are healthy and they can get past the first round, to me, all bets are off, right? As long as there's no major injuries, they just need to win 1 game in Phoenix and go from there. And their experience, the psychology of the game on their end, on the Warriors squad, and then on the Suns squad, let's just say it would be interesting to see play out. If those guys are healthy, Steph, Klay, Draymond remain healthy, and they start finding a groove, that's all I want. That's the fighting chance I want. Now, if one of them isn't right, you know, then it's going to be rough. But those are the 2 scenarios. Either flame out early or they build momentum and they'll go as far as those guys can take them. They might not make it to the finals. They might not make it to the Western Conference Finals. You know, they have inherent flaws. Against the wrong team, they will get beaten up in the paint. But that's why you play the games, you know? As rough as these past few weeks have been, I mean, I'm excited regardless. I'm excited to see these guys in the playoffs. Literally, like we're going to see Steph, Klay, Draymond, and Andre Iguodala in the playoffs again. Did you ever think you would say that the past couple seasons? Did you ever think that that would be true? So I say to myself, and I say to y'all, like, embrace that, because odds are Andre won't be there next year. The core three, though, like we've learned in these past few years to take nothing for granted, right? Steph, Klay, Draymond, they were all supposed to be back and healthy this year, but they've only played 11 minutes total together. So seeing them in the postseason, don't take that for granted. Just honestly, as cheesy as it may sound, cherish those moments, because who knows what this team injury-wise will look like next season. Things might just jump up out of nowhere as these guys get older. So with those three dudes healthy in the playoffs, just enjoy it regardless of what happens. I sure as hell know I will. Anyway, hopefully the Warriors use these next few games and try to get right. Wiggins, great. He's aggressive, but maybe he can start hitting his shots. Draymond, maybe he can, he's starting to get into the flow. Made some bad mistakes here and there, but he's moving in the right direction. So we'll see. Couple days off, and then Utah on Saturday. Anyway, that's another episode of the Oakland Warriors podcast. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Feel free to hit me up on Twitter at Patrick Epino, E-P-I-N-O, or at Oakland Warriors. Check out our new YouTube channel. The link will be in the show notes. Be sure to check us out at oaklandwarriors.com, and be sure to tell your fellow Warrior fan friends to tune in and listen. The Oakland Warriors podcast is produced by National Film Society and is a part of the Basketball Podcast Network. And if you can, please do leave us a 5-star rating on Spotify and or Apple Podcasts, and also leave us a nice review on Apple Podcasts. That would be super helpful. Thanks for listening. That's it. Music in this episode provided by Paper Sun. Special thanks to Paul Amardo for production support. See you next time, and go Dubs.